Go away. I literally had a person come into the shop once and say they wanted Mein Kampf. And I said, I don't sell Mein Kampf. Do you know that's Hitler's book?
Yeah.
And they said, well, it's part of my heritage. That's what they said. So what do you do when you say that? You say, there's more to your heritage than Adolf Hitler. If you go to Germany right now and if you told them that this was part of your heritage, they would punch you in the face.
Yeah.
Because it's something
in Germany, they care.
Yeah.
they really do.
They're not, they don't want it to be part of their heritage.
Yeah.
They don't want it. It has nothing to do with, in any ways, Hitler was, he's more Bavarian. And obviously wasn't a good person.
Every fall, readers, libraries, and schools across the country take part in Banned Books Week. It's more than just a celebration of stories. It's a movement to spotlight the books that have been targeted for removal and to honor the freedom to read. These challenges often target stories about race, gender, identity, and history. Voices that some would rather silence. Joining us today is Dave Pedersen, owner of Maze Books, a downtown independent bookstore. He has a collection of historically banned books, which we had on display last year. We'll talk about historically banned and challenged books, and together we'll explore what's at stake when books are banned, how censorship shapes our communities, and who is left out when books are silenced. Dave.
Yeah.
So your last name, how do you say it?
It's pronounced Pedersen.
Pedersen, okay. Because
Yeah,
I know.
I let everybody say it the wrong way. I don't care. It doesn't, I don't mind.
I remember. I know it's is it Norwegian?
It's Danish.
Danish.
Now you're going to get yourself in trouble.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm just going to say Pedersen.
That's okay. Yeah, my grandfather was from Copenhagen, Denmark.
Okay.
My family lived under occupation from 1940 to 1945, under fascist occupation. They lost everything they had. They had a trucking company that was decimated, all of it. So that's what kind of informs my background with fascism, and that's why I take the stance that I do, because I know that you cannot negotiate. You cannot appease them. They will take what they want. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my grandpa was a refugee. That's how he ended up here. Yeah.
Okay. Are you recording this already? Because we're going to put that in.
Yeah, no, and that's fine. My grandpa, April 1940 is when the Germans declared war on the Danes. It wasn't much of a war. Mm-hmm. They basically said, we're going to blow you up with our airplanes if you don't do what we want. My grandfather at the time, though, was doing what he could do as part of I wouldn't say resistance, but he was part of the merchant mariners, which were helping run supply lines, and he was a cook on a boat. And as soon as they declared war on the Danes, they sunk the ship that he was on. And then he was basically this victim of circumstance where he couldn't return back to his country because of the war. He didn't want to go back. And so he ended up on a Dutch destroyer, through passage through India, made his way somehow, I don't know, to the United States. And at that time, in 1940, you could do 1 year of service and you become a citizen. So he joined the United States Army and was stationed here at Camp Grant for medical training, and then actually went in 1944 to Utah Beach with the 4th Infantry, 12th Infantry Regiment, and he went all the way through as a medic through the Battle of Hurricane Forest. I mean, it was very intense, but then, that informs who I am. My grandfather was proud of his service. My grandfather was proud of what he did for his family back in Denmark, and he was proud of his community. He loved Rockford and decided to stay.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
And then he was a chef at the Pink Pony. So after all that, that's what he ended up becoming, a chef and cooking food.
So were you born and raised here?
I was born in a town called Rochelle.
Okay.
So outside of here, my parents were both union meat packers. So they worked at a processing plant. My mom was a scale girl, and my dad was the liver guy. So he cut out one liver every 12 seconds.
Oh, wow.
So we never had liver at my house.
Okay.
So we lived in a neighborhood. It was a block next to the slaughtering house.
Okay.
And everybody that lived on this block worked there.
Okay.
And then, during the 80s, this was Hormel was going through, there was like a strike.
Okay.
And they basically went from union to non-union at this plant.
Okay.
And my dad ended up with the laborers. But that's where I started. And we moved to the big city when I was like 9 years old.
Okay.
So that's...
What's the big city?
Rockford.
Okay. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure. Chicago.
Well, yeah. No, this was the big city. You would come up here to see Cherryville Mall,
Okay.
which was the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. Mm-hmm. And then we would always hit like Old Time Buffet or Old Country Buffet, which is kind of like a all-you-can-eat thing. And I remember there was a basketball team here in Rockford called the Rockford Lightning. And they were at the old buffet thing when I was there, and I was so excited. I couldn't wait to tell everybody back in school that I had seen these guys, and nobody believed me.
Okay.
It was such a disappointment. I came back and I said, listen, the guys from the basketball team were eating at the buffet. Like, no, they weren't.
Oh.
So that's how, then I said, no, they were. Like, no, we don't believe you.
So are they like how people would think of like the Harlem Globetrotters?
They were bigger than the Harlem
Okay.
Globetrotters for me.
Okay.
It was a huge thing to see. Rockford, when you're from a smaller town, just like a working class neighborhood, Rockford was so different than everything. Our world was so small, and when we'd come up here, this is my dad grew up, we fell in love with it. And the work, obviously, where we were at was drying up. So we ended up here, made friends quick, and fell in love with Rockford.
So tell us about your journey into books, how you ended up having an indie bookstore here in Rockford.
Sure. So I've always been interested in books. My dad was he'd always take us to the library, no matter where we were. His saying was a person should always have a book going, meaning even if, just always have one book, at least one title going. So that informed who I was with reading and writing. I'm a former state worker. I worked for the Veterans Affairs and the Department of Natural Resources. COVID hits. I'm working at the VA. Get through that. It's very intense, as it was for many other people, but this was a long-term healthcare facility I was working in. So I was pretty burned out at about a year and a half of that, and I said I need a change. So I talked with HR about going to college, for grad school, taking off a few months, and they wouldn't let me. And this is after I was like the chief steward. I was the vice president for the union.
Wow. Okay.
I had been sacrificing so much. And I said, well, I don't care. I'm going. And so I applied to a couple schools. I got into DePaul. And my wife said, you should apply to Northwestern for their MFA in poetry and prose. I applied to that, and I got into that program. That program really reintroduced me to my love of reading. And I was reading all the time. And I was back on a visit here in Rockford, and I noticed there was no bookstore downtown, and I said, well, I think we can build one, and I think the community will support it. And that was 3.5 years ago.
Okay, so how's that going?
It's going great. We've since moved. We open on South 3rd Street. We now, next month, it'll be 2 years at our new location. We're seeing people from out of town every single day. I'm selling books every single day. We're having plenty of events. So it's going, in an economy where everybody's a little kind of weary, we are providing something to the community that I think they're really wanting right now, which is time away from the screen and stuff that's affordable, an affordable hobby.
Yeah, and you have like lots of events like the chess club, ways to bring the community together, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And my introduction to you was through poetry. So that's how I learned about you, and you're an author, you have books.
Yeah.
And so that was really cool. And you helped guide me into poetry. So I got really into that. Thank you.
Oh, of course.
And that was awesome. And then I found out about how you have a collection of banned books.
Yes.
Historically banned. So can you help our audience understand what banned and challenged books are?
Sure. So any book can be challenged by, say, a member of the community via, the library or from school. And then if there's enough cause and the board finds it just, they will then ban the book. That's how it used to be. It happened right at Harlem with the book called Genderqueer. And I say just to them. It doesn't mean that it's just as a fact. That book should have never been banned. In Illinois, though, we're lucky enough that we had some House bills pass that we are no longer, before banning a book, they have to look at the American Library Association's Bill of Rights and make sure that it's not being banned because of hate, because people may not agree with someone's, they would call it a lifestyle, but I would say it's who they are. They don't agree with them speaking out about who they are. So we're lucky in Illinois that that's been challenged in its own. But everywhere, if somebody takes issue with a book or something in a book, let's say like Mein Kampf, let's say we don't want Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf being taught in school. Well, we could challenge that, and it's possible that they could ban it. But in recent years, and even going back to like Catcher in the Rye and stuff before, or Allen Ginsberg's work, it's being used as more of a political tool than actually looking at what's inside of the title, what's inside of the material, or what it's talking about. So, basically, if a book is good, it has been banned, and most books has been challenged. It's not hard to. Everybody takes issue with every book that's been written. It seems like. Yeah,
and this year's theme is about censorship. It's called, for Banned Books Week, it's called Censorship is So 1984.
Oh, hey. That's right.
So it's a connection to Orwell's book.
Right.
And so can you tell us about that book? And I know you have a copy of it.
I do. I don't have a first edition. I have a really cool, it's a giant Bantam edition with amazing art on the cover. I had close to a first edition that was actually a library book that I sold, and it had the original checkout card and had never been checked out. So that was kind of a neat piece. The book itself, though, is by George Orwell. Many would say that it's anti-communist, and they would be wrong. In America, they would say it's pro-communist. That's why it was banned in Florida in 1981. It was banned for being pro-communist. Well, the book is anti-Stalinist and anti-authoritarian and anti-dictator. So the book looks at through the protagonist's job is to disintegrate words, is to remove words from our language. But so much on top of that is about government control of how we even think, down to you could be convicted of a thought crime for thinking things that are against the state. It's a very important book, very much similar to Animal Farm, which is also by George Orwell, which is a historically challenged and banned book, which uses animals taking over a farm from a farmer, but then looks at kind of what happens when you have groups of resistance. Obviously, there's usually a demagogue that pops up, and that's who they follow. So great stuff if you're into political takeovers, but also you want to understand censorship and kind of how it does permeate the political platform we're living in now even. So, yeah.
And I know Howl is one of the poems that was banned and challenged and censored. Can you share that story?
Sure. So that was written, or that was first published in 1955, Allen Ginsberg's Howl with City Lights, by Lawrence Ferlinghetti. It's the first paperback book store in America. In 1957, it was a group of custom agents, or one, that challenged it or arrested the publisher, Ferlinghetti, and even the manager, Shig, who was selling the book, to agents of the customs. I guess it's kind of weird thinking about customs now. In any case, they went to court and they found that they basically just wanted to remove one word. Okay. And the question was then, is it still complete if you remove one word? And the answer is no, it's incomplete to what the artist wants. And we won. That's how you got Henry Miller's stuff published. So the Howl Obscenity trial is a very interesting trial because if you go back and look at the transcripts, it's talking about art versus government. And how does a customs agent know more than a poet about what their poems are supposed to say or what's good for America? So it's a slippery slope, though, because it seems like this pops up all the time now. It's like, well, just because you can challenge something doesn't mean you should ever overstep into telling someone you can't include one word.
Right.
And it's always, even from the time that challenges first popped up, it's always been this kind of dance around what's real. And I mean, the real point of what they were really trying to do was limit a man who was identifying his sexual preference and speaking about it openly. He was gay, and he was talking about his intimate moments, as all poets do. So they could say that it was obscene, but what they're essentially saying is, we don't agree with who Allen Ginsberg is as a person. And that's how it always is. They're always dancing around what they want to say, which is usually that they're a bigot.
Yeah.
I hate to put it that way, but you can try to say it a million different ways. I'm almost censoring myself trying to think of a different word, but it's because of who they are. It's because of this hate or anger that they have inside of them that they can't just allow a piece of art to work, and they don't even have to read it. That's the other part.
Yeah, like people have a choice.
They do.
And so I think that's one of the things that we don't think about. It's like, oh, you have a choice to read it or not to read it.
Correct. So. And I think there's this misinterpretation or this idea that this stuff is being crammed into kids' minds or down people's throats, and it's not. It's part of a curriculum, and you should challenge yourself to be uncomfortable. That's the entire point of reading something that you're going to learn something. And that is the scary part, is like maybe what they're really implying is they don't want people to learn. Maybe what they're implying is they don't want people to step outside of the zone of what they want to tell them. And that's censorship, and that's authoritarianism, and that's absolutely everything that is against the First Amendment.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I'm even thinking back to my high school and the books that were required reading. So, there was Grapes of Wrath.
Banned in Kern County, California.
Catcher.
Yeah.
Catcher in the Rye.
The most challenged book in American history.
Yeah. And so it's just and Animal Farm. Yeah. Or was it The Jungle?
Jungle, 1902, Upton Sinclair was burned by the Nazis in 1933 because of the socialist ideologies that Upton Sinclair had. Him and Sinclair Lewis both. Sinclair Lewis famously wrote another banned book, It Can't Happen Here, 1935 also. So at the same time, right after the Nazis are burning, and Sinclair Lewis is talking about this in the book of what would happen in America. It's strikingly accurate, and scary.
Yeah, for sure. So is there a time where a ban or a challenge is helpful, or?
It's hard because a lot of the times you'll hear challenges from extremely right-wing groups that say stuff like the Turner Diaries, which is a racist manifesto about a race war, or stuff like the Marquis de Sade, very explicit stuff. And my thought is that if we can learn from it, then there are certain books that we should always carry every book as long as, not a criminal book. But I don't think everybody should, I think it's better to have them on, accessible than be inaccessible. It's a slippery slope sometimes with certain materials, but at the end of the day, I would rather people have those materials and have access to those materials than try to guess what's in them.
Right.
Or try to, somebody online telling them, well, this is what you need to know about this book. I think we have to be very careful now, because we have to have source material. Everybody has an opinion now. Everyone online has an opinion, and they're parroting other opinions. And, I don't know why we have moved away from sourcing, quotes or sourcing where we're getting stats from, but it doesn't seem to matter, you know, in the heat of the moment, I guess.
Yeah. And so I think it's interesting, too. It's like I know for even school librarians and librarians here, they're looking through it, and we grab books that we put them in places where they are age appropriate.
Correct.
And so we're not saying anything like, oh, you have to read this book if it's not mature. I think as a parent, you would know what your child can and is able to understand and mature enough to know.
Right. But it's hard because people want to believe the most negative thing. Mm-hmm. They want some sort of conspiracy. They want there to be something that's bigger than it is. And if you look at a book, most of them, especially for kids' book, will tell you what the age range is. Mm-hmm. It's right there on the book. Mm-hmm. So it's not saying, you know, your toddler needs to read Howl by Allen Ginsberg. I don't think anybody would ever say that. There's some poems in there that maybe, you know. But what we're saying is that, and what anybody who's a proponent of freedom of speech is that people should have access to it. It's part of your tax dollars, you know, mm-hmm. which, you know, it's part of public funding. Mm-hmm. It's technically the possession of all of us. Mm-hmm. So when people take it away just because they can, we should be a little outraged by that, because essentially they're removing something from your ownership, from public ownership. So
what would be a few banned books that you have come across that you would recommend or are your favorites?
Sure. I've got some notes here. Let's see. We just read It Can't Happen Here, Sinclair Lewis, 1935. It's a fantastic read because in the book, the main character's name is Dormus Jessup, and he's a hard centrist, meaning he's not a Republican, he's not a Democrat, he runs a newspaper business, and he prints, you know, the facts. But what do you do when the facts become blurred? What do you do when you're not sure about the information you're getting? What do you do when there's an authoritarian threat mm-hmm. that is changing the landscape of your own country? To in line with stuff like he talks about Benito Mussolini, Adolf Hitler, and kind of the rise of fascism in Europe. And I don't want to give the ending away, but it gets really dark. I mean, but it's very similar to what actually happened in Germany, you know, with concentration camps. It's a piece of fiction.
Okay.
Yeah. So it basically imagines what would happen if we had, you know, a dictator and a massive private army mm-hmm. to take over our country and limit the rights that we take, even our human rights mm-hmm. To exist. What would happen? What would our country look like? And a lot of stuff was surprisingly accurate. You know, some of the stuff they wanted to ban. Okay. So that's a great one to read. It's a slow burn, but once it picks up. Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury is a mandatory reading, especially if you love books. Uh-huh. It's one of those books that I rarely, as a bookseller, find in the wild because nobody wants to get rid of that book. Because
I have it.
You'll have it forever because it's such an important book. Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, I think is a great book about trauma. It's a historically challenged and banned book. Kurt Vonnegut survived the bombing of Dresden, and 150,000 people were killed. It was estimated by gel diesel fire. On purpose, they burnt Dresden down. And while that was happening, he was in a bunker in a old slaughtering house, and survived the bombing. And then he says when he went up there, this is a true story, but it's a piece of fiction. He said when he got out of the bunker, he said that Dresden looked like the surface of the moon, you know, like kind of like. So it's an important book because it thinks about in it. He's like time traveling, the protagonist is, but it's using trauma and these kind of like traumatic memories that we have, where we're almost propelled outside of our body, mm-hmm. where we feel like we've traveled somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So it's a fantastic book. The foreword where he talks about being a veteran is probably one of the most spot on things about staying up at night and thinking about the people you served with and seeing if they're still alive and stuff. It's really good writing.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is Sinclair Lewis?
That was Kurt Vonnegut's
Okay.
Slaughterhouse-Five.
Okay.
Yeah, Sinclair Lewis did It Can't Happen Here. Those are ones to get that I would start with. Howl is a great book of poetry. It's not just the one poem. Howl is in there, but there's a few others, and his poem about America is phenomenal. If you can hear him reading it, there is the F word is in it, but he's talking about it kind of like against nuclear war. And if you think about the fact that we're more upset about the F word than we are the WAR word, that speaks to exactly what he's writing about.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So where do you think we are, the temperature of banned and challenged books?
No, it's good. That's a good question. I think in Illinois, I think we're looking at, it's an issue now of states' rights and how much we can protect and who's willing to bend to the knee. It's scary. It is scary to see what people think is happening, that there's some sort of underground, cabal of people that are trying to change kids from who they are instead of enlighten them of maybe who they are, And when we see people who are conflicted, who are growing up in places where they're not allowed to be who they are, I think we're seeing more of that. And we all know kind of what happens with that when someone is raised in a family where they're not accepted as who they are, and they're not given any material to confirm how they're feeling. It's a scary time because it's not good. Censorship is never good. Historically, when has censorship ever been good? I'm sure someone can think of one, or two, but don't we want to know the truth? So it's hard because there are multiple truths out there. It's almost like people believe there's a spectrum of truth, but we're living in a strange time, and I'd say it's more important than ever to look at your sources of where you're getting your information from and understand how they came to the conclusions that they did. Research methods and applied statistics was one of the best courses I ever took in my life because it taught me to be a skeptic. It taught me to look at data. It taught me to say, oh, this is a study that's been done? Well, what's the sample size?
Right.
Because they only have to have 30 people for, them to publish a study. And then looking at statistical significance and all these things. But it's up to us as citizens to speak out when somebody has said something that is wrong or incorrect. And it doesn't matter about politeness. If somebody's trying to jam an idea that is against the truth or against even, common courtesy, it's okay to say, I don't appreciate that, or it's okay to say, no, that's not true. I think it's okay to do that.
Yeah.
Just be careful because some people don't know how to take that. Some people have been ingesting propaganda for 20 to 25 years now, and their worldview is completely opposite of what's actually happening.
Yeah. And I think about how books, whether fiction or nonfiction, once you're in the story, it really helps us to gain another point of view.
Yes.
And not just be stuck in our own bubble and just begin to see people differently.
Right.
Hopefully.
Read the counter arguments.
Yes.
Read the opposing side. I read Project 2025. I read it.
Okay.
Most people should. Read things that see what they're seeing. You'd be very surprised, know. And I'm saying from the opposite side too. The idea that some people can't be saved on opposite sides or we can't find some kind of common ground is ridiculous. The common ground is that we're all working hard to secure something for ourselves. It's getting harder because we're being pushed in two directions, but at our base, at our core, we're all just trying to have a little peace and a little peace of mind for our families and for our future. That is the common ground. So if we can agree to that, I think we can build on that.
Yeah.
But hopefully we can get to that point where we're talking about what we have in common instead of fighting all the time. But right now it's going to be a little agitation. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you have hope?
Of course, always. Yeah, I always have hope. I think locally, if we look at how many books are being banned or challenged locally, I think that's a plus. We had it happen in Harlem. Mm-hmm. The community responded. It actually, when they banned genderqueer, we had a couple people run for board. Mm-hmm. That's how, so some of these things are going to propel people into positions where they can affect change, and these are the right politicians or right elected people to have because that's why they want to do it. Mm-hmm. And it's not about this self-service. Maybe a little bit. You got to have a little bit of an ego to be a politician. That's just part of it. You have to have pretty decent hair and or terrible hair and then an ego. But mostly good politicians or great politicians are there to serve the members of their community. And that's where we do have power is locally. Locally is where you have way more power than nationally. Nationally, you watch national news like, oh, I can't do anything about this, right. And it can be kind of devastating. Locally, you can make change almost instantly,
So we're going to conclude soon.
Yeah, okay, got it.
And so is there anything that that is important that you haven't had a chance to share?
I would just, I guess, the importance of our local libraries and having access to material cannot be understated. My family was a working family. I think we've covered that. Yeah. And the library in Rochelle was my daycare. 100%. And I had free reign to run around in there and to read and go through the catalog cards. And I learned how to operate it was like the film stuff where you'd watch the microfilms.
Yeah,
like all that stuff.
Yeah.
And, they would just let me do what I wanted to do. And that's just kind of how it was. And exploring books and having access to books is why I am who I am today. That's why I sell books. That's why I care about literature. And that's why institutions like the library need to be protected from censorship, from authoritarianism, and really should be a place for the public to meet, to educate themselves, to learn something from 3D printing to how to draw pick up a book on that. Whatever you want to do, that's what the institution is here, and it should be protected. Because as soon as it's gone, what happens to people who can't afford to buy books?
Right.
Where do they get their knowledge from? That is censorship.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
That's awesome. I love hearing from you. And if you get a chance, I hope that our audience will go in and just have a conversation with you. I always enjoy visiting you at the bookshop and just seeing where our conversations go.
Yeah. Downtown and the culture here in Rockford it's very interesting. The bookstore is like directing a documentary in real time. You never know who's coming through the door, and I absolutely love the customers that I have, and I love giving them a place where they feel like they can be who they are.
Yeah. So to our audience, go visit Maze Books, have a conversation with Dave, and thank you so much, Dave, for coming in. I appreciate your voice in our community.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys.
So why does Banned Books Week matter? Because stories matter. They shape the way we see ourselves, each other, and the world we live in. Yet across our country, books are being banned or challenged because they dare to tell truths that make us uncomfortable. When we silence those voices, we don't just remove words from a page, we erase perspectives, histories, and futures. Because at its heart, the fight against censorship isn't only about books. It's about justice, equity, and the freedom to think critically.